But the day after the fight, right after the day after, I woke up and told my wife, "Why did I do that?" I don't know.
Is it true that you made $170 million from this fight? I made a lot of money, the most money I've made ever.
Give him a chance. And that's all one needs is just a chance.
Mike Tyson and Anthony Joshua have just shaken the boxing world to its absolute core, and the impact cannot be overstated. What is unfolding right now feels seismic, a level of disruption that is impossible to ignore. The fallout is already unstoppable, gaining speed like a runaway freight train with no brakes in sight. Their explosive claims involving Jake Paul and an alleged $5 million bribery scandal are sending shockwaves through fans, fighters, and insiders across the sport. Almost no one anticipated this story erupting with such overwhelming force. The truth now coming to light appears far darker than anyone expected, far more troubling than early rumors suggested, and it is fundamentally altering how boxing will be viewed moving forward. This moment represents a deep shift in perception, forcing people to reconsider boxing not just as
Anthony Joshua just makes the whole sport look ridiculous. Gets them more attention.
Despite everything that had already begun to shift within the boxing world, a short gym clip of Mike Tyson suddenly leaked online, and what followed stunned everyone who heard it. The words that came out of his mouth landed harder than any punch he ever delivered inside the ring. This sport used to mean something. Now it's being bought. Those words were not spoken for attention, and they were not part of any calculated PR strategy. They came out with pure, raw disgust. You could hear it clearly in his voice and feel it in the way he said every line. People who heard the clip, who truly listened, immediately understood that something serious was unraveling. This was not just another retired fighter reminiscing about the past or complaining about how things used to be. This was Iron Mike Tyson, a legend who has witnessed every side of boxing, openly declaring that the system itself is broken. And coming from someone like him, that statement carries weight, enormous and undeniable weight.
I don't remember the fight that much. I kind of blanked out a little.
Sir, did you watch it back or anything, or no?
I'm going to watch the fight. No, I have not. Coming back from the first round, and then the next thing I remember Jake is doing some kind of,
The reaction was immediate and explosive, spreading through the boxing world like a wildfire racing across dry grass. Fans everywhere began asking the question no one ever wanted to voice out loud, the kind of question that makes your stomach sink the moment you seriously consider it. What if the fights people paid for, the matches they stayed up all night to watch, the events they spent hundreds of dollars on, were never as real as they believed? What if behind the gloves and the cameras, beyond the hype, the interviews, and the press conferences, there were quiet deals being made, money trails carefully hidden, and outcomes subtly shaped long before the opening bell ever rang? That single thought, even the possibility of it, shook the sport to its very foundation. Because once doubt enters the picture and people start questioning what is real, nothing feels safe anymore. Every knockout, every close decision, every underdog victory, and every iconic moment suddenly comes under intense scrutiny, with all of it examined through a lens of suspicion.
Amateur coming into the game with no experience, he's taken on some good names. They may be old, they may be from different combats in terms of MMA and so on, but he's got in the ring at a decent level, fought Tommy Fury.
Less than 24 hours later, and this is where the situation truly escalated. The shock didn't just return, it doubled, maybe even tripled in intensity. Anthony Joshua broke his silence during a training session, and what he said mirrored Tyson's tone almost perfectly, which stunned people because these are two very different fighters from completely different eras. People are being paid to play roles. That single sentence, those exact words, moved through the boxing world like a surge of electricity, jolting everyone it reached. Two giants of the sport, unquestioned legends who built their careers along entirely different paths, were now pointing to the very same issue. That isn't coincidence, that's confirmation. Why did you just call me again? I didn't call you anything. Why did you call me, Mike? The tension in that brief exchange revealed just how serious this situation has become. These are not men who speak casually or without purpose, and when both of them are saying something is wrong, you can be sure that something is deeply and undeniably wrong.
Really not trying to like be tough or something. It didn't feel.
You trying to
that
be a
at all.
tough guy or something?
I didn't even feel a single thing.
How?
Not even like, oh my God, that hurt. Like my skin, like the impact.
Tyson is not just another retired fighter who shows up for celebrity appearances, smiles for cameras, and signs autographs on cue. He is the raw product of brutal gyms, broken bones, street fights, and an era when boxing was about pure survival, not branding deals or Instagram followers. He came up in a time when you fought because you had no other choice, where losing meant everything, and where respect was earned through blood, pain, and sacrifice, not purchased through marketing campaigns. Joshua, by contrast, built his career with military-level discipline, major sponsors supporting him from an early stage, and a clean, polished public image that corporations and brands love to associate with. He represents the modern success story, the fighter who followed the system perfectly and did everything right within the new boxing economy. That is exactly why it matters when someone that calculated, someone with that much to lose, finally breaks the silence and puts his reputation on the line. By the time Joshua spoke up, the situation was already spiraling beyond control. He did not accuse anyone directly, did not name names, and did not point fingers at specific fighters or promoters. He didn't have to. The message landed clearly with everyone who was paying attention. The system itself had changed at a fundamental level. What was once about who could fight, who had the skill, heart, and technique to survive, had slowly become about who could sell, who could generate hype, and who could make the numbers work for promoters. And that shift, that transformation from sport to spectacle, is exactly where the modern boxing engine now operates.
Wish he would have, like put up a better fight so then I could have like risen more and done more. And like he was surviving.
He was.
So
annoying.
that was the only thing I didn't like.
So annoying when they don't bring.
Jake Paul's rise has been fast, truly meteoric, and deeply confusing for many traditional boxing fans who still struggle to understand how it all happened. A YouTuber transformed into a main event attraction in just a few short years simply doesn't add up to people who grew up watching fighters grind for decades before earning a spotlight. Yet his fights consistently pull in millions of online views, sell out arenas once reserved for legitimate championship bouts, and generate massive pay-per-view numbers that rival, and sometimes surpass, those of established champions. According to public reports and industry analysis, some of his events reportedly crossed the 800,000 by mark, a figure that sounds almost unreal. That number is higher than many genuine world title fights featuring champions who dedicated their entire lives to mastering the sport. Take a moment to really think about that. A former YouTuber drawing bigger numbers than professional world champions. That single fact alone says everything about where boxing stands right now and how dramatically the landscape has shifted.
This fight, what will win me this fight is performing on the night. And I have to respect.
But here's the question that keeps resurfacing. The one people simply cannot stop asking no matter how uncomfortable it feels. How did this happen? And how did it happen so fast? Behind closed doors and off the record, promoters have quietly described the modern scene as a kind of social media fight factory, where clicks matter more than skill and visibility outweighs ability. In this new environment, the story, the narrative, and the manufactured drama carry more weight than the scorecards or the actual level of boxing talent inside the ring. Heroes and villains are selected early in the promotional process, carefully chosen based on what will drive the most engagement, and everything that follows is designed to keep audiences hooked, pulled along from one press conference to the next until fight night finally arrives. Within this system, cooperation often matters more than true competition. Fighters are no longer just athletes testing themselves against the best available opponents. They become characters inside a storyline, expected to play roles that were written long before the first punch is thrown. The viral moment, the clip that spreads across platforms millions of times, now carries more value than a clean, technical victory that traditional boxing purists once celebrated. Boxing culture did not vanish overnight in some sudden or dramatic collapse. Instead, it was slowly and methodically replaced by viral culture, social media metrics, and algorithm-driven decision-making that now shapes the sport from top to bottom.
I've never gone in there and knocked someone out within 10 seconds. There's a methodical process to knocking someone out. But if the opportunity presents itself, I'm not planning on carrying.
Then come the most disturbing claims, the allegations that even hardened skeptics can't easily dismiss, and that force people to pause and wonder if there is something very real unfolding beneath the surface. Industry insiders, people who work directly within boxing and have seen the contracts firsthand, describe something they refer to as appearance incentives, and this detail is crucial. These are not bonuses for winning, not rewards tied to performance or skill, but money paid simply for showing up and playing a specific role in the overall production. The contracts are said to reward the story being told rather than the actual result inside the ring, with paperwork that prioritizes headlines, online buzz, and social media engagement over scorecards, technique, or competitive performance. There's also serious discussion about silence clauses quietly built into these agreements, along with pressure, real and potentially career-ending pressure, to sign strict non-disclosure agreements. Fighters are allegedly warned clearly to stay quiet about what they witness behind the scenes, what they hear during negotiations, and what they are asked to do as part of the process. If they speak out, if they break that silence, doors reportedly close immediately. Opportunities disappear overnight, careers stall, and many never recover. Faced with that reality, many choose silence as a means of survival, swallowing what they know, because speaking up could mean losing everything they spent years fighting to build.
Big bag of rupees just for being.
The key point here, and it's critical to grasp, is this. These claims are not about outright fixing outcomes like some shadowy organized crime scheme. They point to something far more subtle, yet potentially far more dangerous. It's about controlling the narrative, shaping how the fight is sold to the public, managing how the opponent behaves during promotion, and dictating how the story unfolds week by week. It determines who becomes the hero that fans cheer for and who becomes the villain they pay to see lose. It's about manufacturing drama, engineering conflict, and choreographing every detail except the actual punches thrown inside the ring. That is exactly why Tyson and Joshua's next moves shook the boxing industry to its core and sent powerful figures scrambling, rattled by the sheer exposure of what was happening behind the scenes.
Hit with a bomb.
They met in private at a Vegas gym, far from the spotlight and away from cameras. No managers were present, no press invited, no handlers moderating the conversation. Just two men who built their careers the hard way, who know exactly what real boxing looks like, sitting down to discuss what they had been witnessing. According to sources close to the situation, people either present or hearing firsthand from those who were, the conversation was intense, unfiltered, and completely honest. They spoke about integrity, about manipulation, about the direction the sport was taking, and whether it could still even be recognized as boxing. When they left that gym, something fundamental had shifted. A decision had been made. Joshua was blunt and direct. "I'm done pretending this is normal." Tyson followed with words that struck even deeper, carrying the full weight of his legacy. Fans deserve to know when something's real. Those two lines, those simple but powerful statements, told the entire story. This wasn't about money, jealousy, or older fighters resenting the new generation. This was about conscience, about refusing to stay silent any longer while something they loved was being systematically destroyed.
It's not a casual, relaxed fight where you can kind of move around and get your groove and he's going to stay on the outside and you're going to... No, it's just constant. He survived that guy twice. He survived, in my opinion, the most skillful heavyweight of all time. Twice. And you're going to go box him? And
the timing could not have been worse for Jake Paul's camp. It was absolutely catastrophic. Anyone who follows boxing knows he usually responds instantly to any controversy, challenge, or hint of drama. The man lives on social media and thrives on attention. This time, though, there was nothing. No tweets, no Instagram stories, no interviews, no live streams, no response videos, no press statements, just complete silence. And in boxing, a world where image is everything and controlling the narrative is more important than almost anything else, silence is never accidental. It is either strategic, calculated, or born of panic. Meanwhile, quietly and without fanfare, fighters across divisions, weight classes, and promotional companies began showing support. Likes on posts, shares of quotes, subtle comments that said enough without saying everything. No one went on record with specific allegations, but everyone understood what was happening. The code was being spoken, and the message was clear. He got hit with a bomb. Boxing now sits at a genuine crossroads, a fork in the road that will determine what the sport becomes for the next generation. Old school boxing versus the new machine, integrity versus influence, skill versus storyline, respect versus reach, traditional values versus modern metrics. Tyson and Joshua didn't ask to lead this fight. They didn't wake up wanting to be revolutionaries or spokesmen. It was forced on them by a system they no longer recognize, a boxing world that looks nothing like the one they entered. If even part of these claims is true, if even a fraction can be documented and verified, the fallout will be massive and far-reaching. Fan trust collapses, and once lost, it's nearly impossible to recover. Sponsors rethink deals, demand transparency they never cared about before. Fighters question their careers, wondering if their accomplishments were real or manufactured. Regulators, long asleep at the wheel, return with pressure and oversight. The manufactured fight economy, the system built on storylines and social media metrics, cannot survive real scrutiny, real investigation, or real journalism. This is no longer just about Jake Paul, though he has become the symbol. It is about whether boxing remains a legitimate sport or becomes pure entertainment, scripted and produced like any television show. The storm is already here, and once legends stop protecting the system and the old guard decides they're done playing along, nothing stays hidden for long. Truth has a way of coming out.
There's the right hand. Jake Paul goes down again. And he's tired. He needs to keep moving them feet like he was in the early rounds. But
What made the whole situation even stranger, more unsettling, was what happened next, or more accurately, what didn't happen. Sometimes the absence of action speaks louder than any action could. Jake Paul is usually lightning fast when it comes to responding to controversy. He has built his entire career on it, able to sense drama from miles away, detect conflict before it even forms, and pounce on it immediately with content, commentary, and chaos. But this time, there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. No tweet storms blasting every 5 minutes. No angry YouTube videos, no reaction clips, no press conferences, no interviews, just silence. And not the kind of silence that comes from being busy or taking a day off social media. This was the kind of silence that makes a room shift uncomfortably, that makes people exchange uneasy glances, the kind where everyone keeps checking their phone because they know something should be happening. Something always happens, but this time it didn't. When a man who literally built his brand on being loud, present, and controversial suddenly stops speaking, the noise around him grows louder. The absence becomes deafening. The boxing world noticed immediately, within hours. Commentators froze mid-sentence during broadcasts, waiting for a response. Fans refreshed his accounts like they were watching a countdown. Even rival fighters, those who normally mock him relentlessly, paused, anticipating a storm of reactions and call-outs. But nothing came. The silence quickly became the story itself within the sport, among promoters, managers, and fighters alike. And it was interpreted in only one way: damage control. When nothing you say is safe, when every word risks making things worse, you say nothing. And that silence told everyone exactly what they needed to know about the validity of these claims.
Dangerous. He's going to be terrifying, and he's going to have a lot to prove. He's going to be very angry that Jake Paul wants to fight him. Very upset.
While Jake's camp went completely dark, refusing interviews and disappearing from social media, something else quietly began to unfold online, spreading across platforms and accounts. Fighters from different weight classes, different promotional companies, and even different countries began showing support for Tyson and Joshua, not loudly, not through press conferences or public statements, but with subtle signals. Likes on posts they normally wouldn't engage with, reposts of quotes that needed no extra commentary, short comments that said just enough, words like real, recognized, facts, or about time. It was the boxing version of a nod across the room, an acknowledgement between people who understood the unspoken code. Everyone watching got the message without it ever being spelled out. That's when the real battle became visible, unfolding in plain sight. The sport had officially fractured into two worlds, two entirely different ecosystems coexisting in the same arena, each following its own rules and values.
Very upset that this YouTuber who's fought Tommy Fury, who's a legit boxer, and, a couple other guys that were legit boxers. That's it.
On one side stood the old blood, traditional fighters raised in real gyms, men and women who learned the sport the hard way through years of discipline and sacrifice. Early mornings running in the dark, broken ribs they fought through, coaches who barely smiled and never handed out false praise. Careers built on pure sweat, grit, and dedication, not subscriber counts or social media followers. These were fighters who rose through amateur systems, who fought for small purses or no purse at all, dedicating their entire lives to mastering a craft. On the other side stood the new machine, the influencer boxing model and viral hype engine, contracts crafted around algorithms and social media metrics, fights booked based on potential views rather than rankings, press conferences treated like comedy shows, entertainment spectacles where the actual boxing often took a backseat. Fights were sold like movie trailers, with dramatic cuts, manufactured storylines, and carefully orchestrated beef, prioritizing spectacle over sport.
Went back from the first round, and then the next day I remember Jacob doing some kind of, I don't know, what was he doing at the ring?
This is not just a difference in style or approach, not merely older generation versus younger generation. It is a fundamental clash of values, a debate over what boxing should truly represent. Integrity versus influence, skill versus storyline, respect versus reach. One side views the sport as sacred, something to be protected, preserved, and honored. The other treats it as content, raw material to be shaped, packaged, and sold to the highest bidder. The frightening part, the aspect that makes this situation so complex and difficult to resolve, is that both sides are financially successful, actually, extremely successful. The traditional model still works, and the new influencer-driven model often works even better, producing numbers that old-school promoters never imagined. That is why this moment matters so deeply, and why the eyes of the entire boxing world are glued to it. When money and values collide like this, when two fundamentally different philosophies are both being rewarded, something eventually gives. In this case, what is at risk of breaking is nothing less than boxing itself, the very structure, credibility, and integrity of the sport.
In the sense that the job we do, knockouts is like the cherry on top.
If even half of what insiders are saying is true, if even a fraction of these allegations can be verified and documented, the fallout will be absolutely brutal, career-ending and legacy-destroying for some. Fans will lose trust in what they're watching, and once that belief is shattered, it's almost impossible to get it back. Trust is like glass in that way. People will stop believing the wins are legitimate. They'll stop caring about belts and championships because they seem meaningless. They'll stop paying for fights, because why spend money on something they suspect is manufactured? The pay-per-view model collapses the moment fans feel cheated. Sponsors will begin asking uncomfortable questions they never considered before. Contracts will be scrutinized by legal teams, clauses rewritten to enforce protections and transparency. Nobody wants their brand tied to a system that looks manufactured or rigged. Companies don't fear losing short-term revenue. They fear losing credibility forever, being associated with scandal, and having their name spoken in the same sentence as fraud or deception. All of this entire situation threatening to tear the sport apart, started because two legends decided they were tired of pretending, tired of going along with something they knew was wrong. That's why people keep saying this is not about Jake Paul anymore, even though he has become the face of it. He is merely the symbol, the most visible representation of a much larger problem. The real issue, the thing actually at stake, is the future of the sport itself. Is boxing a legitimate competition where the best fight the best? Or is it now a content channel where storylines matter more than skill? Is it built on athletic ability and years of dedication, or on social media followers and viral moments? Are champions crowned by punches, judges, and merit, or by algorithms, engagement metrics, and promotional power? Tyson and Joshua never wanted this responsibility. They didn't ask to become the guardians of the old code, defenders of traditional boxing values. But history has a way of choosing its messengers, selecting those who will stand up at crucial moments. Right now, the sport stands at the edge of a cliff, facing two very different futures. One step leads to pure entertainment, boxing as spectacle, fights as content, everything manufactured for maximum engagement. The other step leads back to the roots, back to what boxing was meant to be. A legitimate sport where skill matters and outcomes are earned. The decisions made in these moments, through conversations, conflicts, and revelations, will echo for decades, determining what boxing looks like for the next generation. That's what keeps everyone uneasy, what makes industry insiders nervous, what causes uncomfortable silence when it's discussed. When legends stop protecting the system, when they refuse to cover up corruption or manufacture drama, and the silence breaks, the truth begins to leak into the public, and the next chapter becomes unpredictable. You cannot control it anymore. The storm is far from over. It is only gathering momentum and power. More voices will come forward, emboldened by Tyson and Joshua's courage. More stories will surface, more allegations, more documentation, more deals questioned and investigated, more careers altered, some ending, some redeemed. This was never just an expose, never just juicy drama for fans to consume and forget. This was a warning, a line drawn, a moment when people who love the sport decided they could no longer remain silent. What happens next will determine whether boxing survives as a legitimate sport or becomes something else entirely.